Good evening everyone. For Telesur English, I'm Sarah Begum in Caracas, Venezuela. And we start tonight in Venezuela. That is where opposition leader Enrique Capriles called on Venezuelans to the streets. President Nicolas Maduro warns the right wing is attempting to destabilize the nation. Capriles, in an incendiary tone, claimed Venezuela has reached a moment in which we have to change the government and called for protests. Several incidents of violence have already been reported. This comes nearly a year after Venezuela was paralyzed by weeks of protests with more than a dozen people killed by opposition forces. The move comes as the economic war on Venezuela continues. A government raid on a warehouse linked to opposition figures off the region of Zulia discovered hundreds of tons of basic goods, such as infant milk substitute, rice and beans, forcing shortages and queues. The Venezuelan government says this proves the economic sabotage against the government. The Venezuelan Vice President for Food Security and Sovereignty, Carlos Osorio, said that even with the economic war by opposition forces, the food supply is guaranteed.
Nosotros hoy, 14 de enero.
Today, January 14, we don't have any justification for a network of distribution that some of the large food distributors give excuses saying they can't process or distribute. We have all the primary materials. We did an inventory for the first 2 or 3 days of 2015, and we have, in a preliminary inventory supply, 3 months of all food products.
In Mexico, the wife of the ex-mayor of Iguala, the Mexican city where 43 college students went missing in September, has links with the drug cartel who supposedly massacred the students, Mexican authorities confirm.
Se ha logrado acreditar la relación de María de los Ángeles Pineda Villa con el grupo delincuencial Guerreros Unidos.
We managed to confirm the relation between María de los Ángeles Pineda and the Guerreros Unidos criminal group. It led to a new arrest warrant that was served while she was in prison, as well as 53 more arrests on organized crime charges.
Moving to Colombia, human rights defender Piedad Córdoba has received death threats that she says are related to her activities in support of the peace process. Our correspondent Natalia Margarita reports from Bogotá.
Since Colombia's peace process was announced more than 2 years ago, a sector of the country has declared its opposition to the negotiations.
It is a far-right sector that not only uses legal methods and critiques against the peace process, but also underground methods that border on the illegal. That has already been denounced before the necessary authorities.
On the other side, those who are actively supporting the peace process have been facing intimidation. This is the case of former senator and human rights defender Piedad Córdoba, who received death threats on a funeral wreath, which was delivered to her home Tuesday night.
I believe that behind this, there are powerful forces who are not only very interested in ensuring that the peace process fails, but also that there are no real transformations, such as the strengthening of democracy. They are looking to sabotage the peace talks in Havana.
Nevertheless, the threats won't stop Córdoba from supporting the peace process.
This is not going to stop me. They can continue with their threats if they are able, but the peace process is not going to stop, and I'm not going to run away either. I deeply love this country, to which I have given my entire political life. I have contributed immensely to the peace process together with the people I work with. Colombians for Peace, Poder Ciudadano, Marcha Patriótica, they might assassinate me, but they cannot kill everyone.
Colombia's Minister of Interior has called for an extraordinary general meeting to analyze the protective measures to ensure Córdoba's safety. Meanwhile, social organizations and political leaders have firmly condemned this threat and demanded that the government guarantees the safety of all those actively supporting the peace process. From Bogotá, Natalia Margarita, Telesur.
Thanks to Natalia. Staying in Colombia, the FARC rebel group says it has killed 8 army soldiers in a defensive response to the recent attacks carried out by the Colombian army. The group issued a statement saying that 8 military personnel lost their lives unnecessarily because of government attacks on the group. The FARC have declared a unilateral ceasefire, which the government refuses to make bilateral. The US State Department confirms that the Al-Qaeda video claiming responsibility for last week's attacks on French satire magazine Charlie Hebdo is an authentic video. Al-Qaeda's Yemen branch claimed responsibility for the attack by Islamist gunmen on the Paris office last Wednesday that left 12 people dead, including the country's best-loved cartoonists. Brothers Saeed and Sharif Kawachi, who carried out the attack, are known to have trained with the group.
Just before coming out here, got a note from my colleagues in the intelligence community who have assessed that the AQAP video claiming responsibility for last week's attacks against Charlie Hebdo is authentic. That process had been ongoing since the video was released, but as I said, the intelligence community has now determined that the AQAP video is authentic.
Russia will host talks in Moscow late January between the Syrian government and opposition leaders in an attempt to end the 3-year conflict, which has left over 160,000 people dead and more than 9 million displaced, according to the United Nations. The talks follow international failure to achieve peace in the war-torn Arab nation. We go to Nashwan Abdullah in Damascus.
National opposition leaders have held a meeting to discuss the main issues to be debated in Moscow.
I believe we are attempting to find solutions to the crisis in Syria, and we have mentioned the importance of the dialogue that take place in Moscow.
The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov met with the Syrian ambassador to Moscow, Riyad Haddad, on Monday regarding the meeting. Bogdanov announced that the opposition will be represented by well-known personalities who have the authority to present proposals aimed at achieving a political solution.
Russia is filling the gap left by the declining influence of the imperialist powers like Europe and America in the region.
The Western-backed opposition represented by so-called Syrian coalition refused to take part of the talks in Moscow. Instead, they insist to adhering to US-backed plans to continue with the conflict. Nashwan Abdullah, Telesur, Damascus, Syria.
Catalonia's 2 main parties agreed to hold early elections in the northeastern Spanish region, a vote they want to use as a proxy for a referendum on independence. The government of Spain holds any vote on independence unconstitutional. Artur Mas, the head of the Catalan government, confirmed later in his announcement that the polls will be held on September 27th. And we go now to Gaza, where protesters have been demanding they be paid. Our correspondent Noor Harazin has the story.
A group of former Hamas-run government employees in Gaza began a hunger strike Tuesday. This follows a day of protests demanding payment for their salaries. An employee union official said former civil servants are carrying out sit-in protests at the Palestinian cabinet's headquarters until they get paid. The Consus government condemned the protest, saying demonstrators threatened ministers and caused damage to their vehicles. The allegations have been denied.
We did not threaten anyone. We are just asking for our basic rights. We have been working for months without pay. The Palestinian Unity government should assume their responsibility.
Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zuhri told reporters the Unity government must stop discrimination between employees in Ramallah and Gaza. Since the unity deal was reached, Hamas has asked the new unity government to pay the salaries of the 50,000 civil servants it recruited. After taking over Gaza in 2007, 70,000 Fatah employees have also been laid off since then. Hundreds of Hamas civil servants in Gaza blocked the entrance to the unity government's headquarters in late December, demanding their salaries during a visit by West Bank-based ministers. Noharazin, Telesu TV, Gaza.
And to end, on the peak of Kilimanjaro, a group of cricketers recorded the game played at the highest altitude ever. The summit of Kilimanjaro is 5,730 meters above sea level. Never before has cricket been played at this altitude. With half the oxygen than at sea level, the cricketers reported it as the hardest thing they had ever done. More on these and other stories on our website, telesortv.net/English. For Telesor English, I'm Sarah Begum. Have a good evening.